Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Cardinal Rule.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, tell the audience where they can find you and how long have you had your channel?
Excuse me. Yeah, so you can find me at on YouTube at the Cardinal Rule. If you search that, you should find my channel. I launched it in April, and we were having a good conversation about that before, and which was here's my tip: if you want to launch a YouTube channel covering NFL, launch right before, a little before the draft, because that was a really good time to launch my channel. I launched at the beginning of April, started doing my videos, learning how to do video editing. My early videos weren't all that great, but I got a little bit better. And by the time the draft hit, I had learned enough to do videos that were decent. And I had a couple that really hit for me, and that really helped me to go. I went from like 50 subscribers to like 300 over the course of that weekend, and it kept going. And I'm about 1,100 subscribers right now, in about in 4 months' time. So it's been a lot of fun. Love talking NFL football. Love talking my Arizona Cardinals, and please do check out the channel. I think you'll enjoy what I do. I try to get into the analytics and the film a little bit. Put a lot of work into my videos, and I enjoy making them.
Okay, that's good, man. I mean, I just started knowing your channel like a few weeks ago, and I started seeing your name pop up, and then I associate with the AZ sports fan too. So I've seen you come around. I'm like, okay, I might need to check this guy out, man. Like, okay, I might need to definitely go collaborate, because I see you go on his live stream called the Fan and the Professor.
Yeah, we do that every Monday. He's the AZ sports fan, and my day job is I am a professor, so that's kind of our thing, the fan and the professor. But it also describes our approaches, because he's a little more like the fan who wears his heart on his sleeves, and I'm a little more the analytical kind of cautious in how I approach it, or a little more tempered in how I approach it, and it plays off of each other really well. So yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. Oh, I guess we got a Rams fan saying hello to you.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for saying hi, man. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, but so as far as like your team's update, man, so how's it been going with the Cardinals training camp so far?
So from what I'm hearing so far, so far so good. And obviously, every day in training camp without a major injury is a good day, right, for any team. You never want to see anyone get hurt, and whether it's your team or another team, I don't want to ever see any players get injured. But so they no serious injuries thus far to any major players. I'm hearing some good reports about some coming out of camp about some players that we need to hear good reports about. AJ Green, even though last season, a lot of people thought he was washed, and I actually did a video talking about that. I did a film study, looked at what he did well and didn't do well. And, he had a really rough season last year in Cincinnati. People thought he was washed, but reports coming out of camp for the Cardinals is that AJ Green is looking really good. Like the AJ Green of a couple of years ago. Good reports about Rondale Moore. Robert Alford, good reports on that. So, hearing good things, but this is the time of the year when everyone's got optimism, right? Check back in a couple months and let's see how we're all feeling, right?
Yeah, pretty much. That's just how we got to look into. But yeah, too early in the season, off-season training camp, it does make difference in some ways, but sometimes when it comes to the preseason, it can really determine the true eye test and all that stuff. And like the thing that kind of stands out the most is the Niners and Cardinals do have a good matchup history, and it kind of goes a long ways. And so when it comes down to it, like as far as the team in general, let's just say our cornerback depths are pretty much suspect a little bit. Don't you agree on it?
Here's what I would say. I actually think the depth, speaking for the Cardinals, I can't speak for your team. The depth I don't think is bad. The problem is the front end, high end, like our number 1 and 2 aren't elite. We don't have an elite cornerback out there. But if you look at the depth, okay, so we've got Malcolm Butler, solid starter, not elite, but solid starter. Robert Alford has had injury history. If he can stay healthy, he's been an okay starter, right? Then we have Byron Murphy Jr., who played primarily the slot for us last year. They think they might play him some inside and out. Decent player, not elite. Hopefully he can take a step. Then we've got Darqueze Dennard, not elite, but he's a guy who can play slot and outside. He was a former first-round pick. If you look at his PFF grades, he's graded decently. right? And then they've got the 2 rookies, Marco Wilson, Tay Gowan. So like there's depth, but what there isn't on the Cardinals roster are 2 guys that you feel confident saying that these are definitely 2 high-end starters, right? So my hope is that from that whole collection of guys that have some decent guys who have the potential, that we can get 2 guys who will step in, step up, and perform well as starters, right? So it's not that there isn't depth, it's just that there's a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, a lot of uncertainty. Just compare the difference. Like, okay, like for example, the Niners have pretty much the lock-in starters, but it's pretty much the depth that's the difference. But I guess for the Cardinals, you have some guys there, but you're just not sure who would be the starter. Like, is that what it is? Uncertain?
I think we have an idea, but there isn't certainty. Like, I think Malcolm Butler is certain to be one of the starters, right? Byron Murphy Jr. is certain to be a guy out there who's at least out there in the slot and probably potentially out there on the side. It's at number 2 corners. Like, is Robert Alford going to be healthy? If he is, he's looked good in camp, but he hasn't played in a couple years. So is he, has he lost it? Can he still play? If he can't, can Dark Hezar step in and get started, or can one of the rookies? So there's a lot of question marks there. Whereas you look at, some other teams have a lot more certainty about these are the 2 guys we can rely on. Cardinals have a number of guys that could become that guy, but we don't know who it's going to be for sure.
Oh, okay. So as far as like depth wise, what's is the most concerning for the Cardinals to you that worries you a little bit?
As far as depth, so the position with the least amount of depth is tight end. We have Max Williams, who's a really good blocking tight end. He's not been a primary receiving tight end. I do think he's a better receiving tight end than people think, but he doesn't have great speed. But Max Williams is our starter. We have Darrell Daniels, who, he was on our roster last year, but beyond that, there's a number of guys who've just kind of been on practice squads or, kind of undrafted free agents. So at the tight end position, there really isn't much depth. Now, they don't use the tight end as much as other teams do. They run more 4 receiver sets and 3 receiver sets than other teams, so they don't use a tight end as much, but there is concerning depth there. And then, I would say, there's depth on the defensive interior defensive line, but there's you got JJ Watt, you got Corey Peters, both obviously great players, but both have had injury issues. Beyond that, you've got guys like Jordan Phillips, who signed a big contract but underperformed. Then guys going to their second year, like Lecky Fotu, Rashard Lawrence, that are just young guys who, didn't grade particularly well last year, but they were rookies. So, there is some uncertainty as to, beyond JJ Watt and Corey Peters, who's ready to step in and be a solid everyday, every game starter.
Okay, so pretty much that's what it seems like. As far as the tight end room for the Niners, it seems like we're pretty stacked there. It's just it's going to be more competition there. I mean, I don't have no concerns with that position. But as far as the running backs, that's the strength of our group so far. Like, it doesn't matter how many injuries we got at running back, we tend to make the most out of those guys.
Yeah, well, I think, and I've said this before, the 49ers' strength isn't as much their running backs as it is their running game, right? Because Shanahan schemes it up. He coaches it up. His system is really good for the running game. Their offensive line is really good. And up until this year, when they drafted Trey Sermon, he's just been, getting undrafted free agents, plugging them in there, and they perform well. Niners fans may disagree with me, and that's okay. I don't think the 49ers running backs are necessarily better than other teams' running backs. It's just that Shanahan does such a good job that he can get guys that have decent talent and get the most out of it. Now, Trey Sermon, and listen, I really liked that pick for your team coming out of the draft, because you look at it, Shanahan's gone with these undrafted free agents all these years, and then he drafts a guy. If he's drafted a guy, he sees something in him, and people like Trey Sermon coming out. So if you take a guy like Trey Sermon, put him in that system that's been successful with a lot of undrafted guys, that could be really good for you. So, I think that's really, was a really good draft pick for the Niners.
Yeah, that pick was by surprise. I mean, he's a really good draft pick. Like, the last time that Shanahan did draft a running back, that didn't work out with Joe Williams. So maybe
Mhm.
there's something with Trey Sermon that
Yeah.
Shanahan likes a lot, and plus the running backs coach was pushing for that guy. So
Yeah.
the thing I liked about Trey Sermon was he was a good runner in between the tackles,
Mhm.
good receiving back also. So you can do a lot with this guy. I think when it comes down to it, he's physical after contact too, and that's what you like about him. Like when he was coming from Oklahoma, he was onto the scene. And after that, when he went to Ohio State, he made the most out of it too. So it's like this guy could be a draft gem.
Yeah, for sure.
So okay, as far as the Cardinals, man, like the receiver core is like strong. It's very deep. So which one will pretty much win the number 3 spot between Kirk and Moore? Because I'm hearing that this can be between that slot spot right there.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Like, I'm excited about Rondale Moore. I've done a couple of videos on him, and been some of my most watched videos. And I think the talent for Rondale Moore is just really impressive if he can stay healthy. At the same time, the Cardinals have a history of sticking with vets a little bit and not playing rookies a lot out of the gate. Although it sounds like they're planning to go stray from that with Zayvon Collins this year, declaring him the starter. I think they're going to platoon those two. And you might even see Kirk kind of be the lead guy early on, but man, I just have a feeling Rondale Moore is going to be too electric out there, and they're going to have a hard time justifying not giving him more looks. What we're hearing out of camp is that Rondale Moore has been really impressive. There's a couple bit clips of footage from camp that have kind of made their way through Twitter of him beating defensive backs and making them look silly. And I think in the end, when all is said and done, I think Rondale Moore will have more yards, but Kirk might have more receptions, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I mean, Rondale Moore he seems like an electrifying receiver. Kirk is more like that solid possession type receiver who can make the big plays too. So that's a tough one. But man, if Kirk were to stay healthy, I think he was a big, huge factor for you guys. But now that you got Rondale Moore, he can put the top on the defense. He can be one of those gadget plays too. So that's kind of intriguing there.
Moore has had trouble staying healthy in college. So that's the big question mark for him. But like when you look at the way Moore moves with the ball in his hand, like no one on the team is as good with the ball in his hands except for Kyler Murray. Like Kyler Murray and Rondale Moore both have those kind of crazy movement skills. Kirk has kind of sometimes he was like miscast as an outside receiver. I think they played him on the outside, and he's really should be more of a slot guy. But he's inconsistent, and he's in the last year of his rookie deal. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think that he's a local kid, and a lot of people like that. But I think he's going to command too big of a contract. The amount of money he's going to command as a free agent, even with his modest performance throughout his career, I don't think it's going to make sense for the Cardinals to pay him that much when they've got other young receivers. So I could see them. Even though Kirk is I think he's still a good receiver. I could see them giving more of a shot because they expect Kirk to move on, but man, it'll be interesting to see that. But you're right. I feel like there's depth on the team and receiver, though after the first two guys, it's a lot of unproven depth, which is also a little bit problematic.
Oh, okay. So just like the way my team is, like when it comes to the receivers, you got two of those guys that are good, and the rest are just pretty much unproven. Like you got Mohamed Sanu when he was with the Falcons, he was really exceptionally good. But can we get that Mohamed Sanu, or we're just getting the flash in the pan version of him now? Yeah. So like you got a guy like Trent Sherfield who was on your guys' roster like last season and was a good special teams gunner. Now he's kind of making that push for that slot receiver spot. So any time that you got a chance to see what Trent Sherfield was doing in Arizona that might impress the rest of us?
So it's tough because like you want to pull for Trent Sherfield, undrafted free agent. I think he was out of Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken, was a special team stud for the Cardinals. And it sounds like he's popping, in spring in training camp for the Niners, but we've seen that story before. He had some good preseasons with Arizona, and never quite got a foothold in the receiving core. And right now, part of the reason they let him go is because of there's a lot of the numbers game and the depth, but he had some opportunities. There were some regular season, couple seasons where there wasn't depth and where he got some snaps. And he made a few plays, but he didn't really grab hold of the opportunity. So, listen, if you're a Niners fan, you should be optimistic and hopeful. And maybe he's developed to the point and he's learned enough, and he can step in and be a solid guy for you. But from my perspective, I think what's going to end up happening when it's all said and done is he has a good training camp. He ends up being like the fourth receiver, gets maybe 20 receptions over the course of the year, has a few moments, does really good work for you on special teams, but I don't think he's going to break out and become a household name. But listen, if he proves me wrong, then I applaud him and I wish him the best. So, but listen, he's the kind of player you need on your roster, though. You need those guys who are special team stars. So even if he doesn't end up being a contributor as a receiver, you got yourself a good guy for special teams for sure.
Yeah, that's what that's what I was looking at when I was watching a lot of his highlights. I seen what he does as a special teamer more than what he does as a receiver. But I'm like thinking, well, either way, I don't think there's no way we're going to cut him this time because he kind of stood out. He made some good catches during training camp, but like you said, it's happened with the Cardinals even throughout the preseason where he was making spectacular plays, but wasn't able to get much playing time because of the stack of receiver talent. So there's just quite a few underutilized situations with these players. Like, for example, the Rams, they underutilized Samson Ebukam, which he could be a really steal pickup. Like, you got guys like Gerald Everett, who Seattle just picked up, was pretty much underutilized. Maybe the change of scenery of a change of opportunity gives him a chance to expand, a chance to play more. So we shall see about that,
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Yeah, Jean-Paul Edwards-Dios is a guy who's a subscriber for me in the AZ Sports Fan, really good dude, and he says that he's going to compliment Ayuk and Samuel. And yeah, I feel like Sherfield's a little more the possession receiver, but he could be a nice, solid guy who's that number 3 or 4 receiver for you.
Yeah, I think the number 3 or 4 would pretty much be his best chance. At the worst, he'll just be like the 6th receiver as a special teamer. That would be the worst case scenario. But best case, he could be the number 3 receiver and contribute right away. Oh, so I guess Pale checked out your channel. He's gonna.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you. Yeah, it means a lot. And hey, it looks like you're a Rams fan, but I think some friendly rivalry, but we're kind of fans of the division and we want to know each other's teams, and it's all part of being kind of that friendly rivalry. So, but I appreciate you subbing for sure.
Yeah, this is just all about building this NFC West community and build this channel for everybody else. I mean, you had your channel for 4 months and it's already growing. You're already getting the better, like you said, timing is everything. So it does it does make a difference. Like draft time is perfect because you get a lot of these reactions. You get a lot of people like all that views and all that stuff. It comes into draft day, but where you can better get your reaction and views is when you attend the game and get the reaction in the games. That's what I heard. Like training camp, all the stuff. That's where you get a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm here. AJ Green's looking good. Who has the better season? D-Jax, the Rams, or so? Okay. So who do I think? Deshaun Jackson or AJ Green? So now this is tough because they're very different receivers, right? Deshaun Jackson, he is that deep threat who takes the top off the defense. AJ Green is much more that possession, middle of the field kind of guy. I'm going to go with AJ Green, and I know people say I'll be in the homer, but I think Jackson, his game is at this point is much more that guy who's that almost he's half decoy, half deep threat. Like because schematically, you want that guy going deep, and what that does is it spreads out the defenders and then it opens up things underneath. So I could see him being used a lot and this is no knock on him, but strategically what you're doing is having him go deep, and it's opening up for the other receivers. So I think his value, part of what his value is going to be bringing, is going to be opening things up for the other receivers as much as receiving. So I think I don't think he's going to be one of the primary receivers. He's going to have an important role in the offense. But AJ Green is looking like he's going to be that number 2 receiver. I think they're going to target him a bit. And with DeAndre Hopkins on the other side getting all that attention, I think AJ Green's going to get a lot of looks against number 2 cornerback. So I think Green's going to get more targets, more touchdowns, because I think they're going to use him in the red zone. Jackson might still get more yards because the average yard on reception, but I think that's a really good question. They're both guys who have had success in the past, and question marks about what they have left, right?
Yeah, like Deshaun Jackson, he might just be lucky to be the slot receiver at best. I mean, at this point of his career, he would just put the top on the defense. AJ Green is pretty much pushing to be the number 2 guy. So him and Hopkins, it would make it's a no-brainer. If I had to choose who would be better this season, it's going to be AJ Green if healthy. Deshaun Jackson, if healthy, it's tough. But I would have to put it on AJ Green on this one.
Well, so this gets into, and there's a little bit of nuance to this question, because who's better? How are you defining? Are you defining it by stats, or because you could have a scenario where Jackson has the specific defined role where his job is to take the top off the defense. Occasionally they'll throw it deep to him. And when he's open, he gets some receptions that way. But there's a lot of snaps where they're not throwing it to him, but he's done a good job, opening things up, and they're getting those throws underneath to the other receivers. And there could be a scenario where he does his job really well, but doesn't get the ball thrown to him. And it's like, in a holistic kind of sense where you're looking at game plan, you could have a scenario where Jackson's doing that and is doing an outstanding job of that. His stats are lower, but he's playing really, really well, right? So the question is, how are we measuring it? If we're asking in terms of stats, I think, and he's following up, yards and touchdowns, good point, that is subjective. I think AJ Green's going to get a lot of receptions, but they're going to be shorter. And I think, and again, they're going to use him in the red zone because he's such a physical receiver and a big threat, big receiving threat. So, and especially with as thin as they are at tight end, I think that's all the more reason, they're going to look to AJ Green as that big receiver in the red zone, because they don't have, the tight end threats, like some other teams have there.
Oh, okay. So, as far as him, he is a big target, and it does make it easy for DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins will probably give him some opportunities because they're going to focus on him more. And the thing with Deshaun Jackson, what he brings to the game is he makes the defense get honest, like when it comes to the deep plays and all that. So it does kind of help receivers like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp to get a little bit of their opportunities open. But I think it's gonna give him some opportunities down the road at that point. So as far as team wise, as far as your sleeper player on offense, who's the one player that you've been hearing about that's just gonna make Cardinals fans more pumped up about, that we need to watch out for, like a sleeper?
Well, I think that the obvious choice to me is the guy we've just been talking about, AJ Green, because I'm hearing this stuff out of camp. Peo Time mentioned he's hearing the stuff out of camp. But if you listen to some of the national media, they're still. I was listening to, a podcast or an interview from Pro Football Focus, and I like their work. I use their stuff a lot. But I was listening to something, and they were talking about the Cardinals previewing, and they did this just a couple of days ago. And they're just telling me, AJ Green last year had the lowest yard separation, and they're citing all these stats from last year that were really problematic for AJ Green. And my video on him, I talk about that too. He had a rough year, but they didn't even acknowledge. It's like they hadn't heard the reports out of camp, right? That he's actually looking good and stuff. So I feel like around the national media, I think sports media not all of them seem to be aware that AJ Green is looking rejuvenated, right? So I think he's the obvious choice. But if I'm going to go for someone who is maybe we haven't talked about, I think a guy could be James Conner. former running back for the Steelers. You know, he's had some injury problems. That seems to be a theme here. Cardinals signed him. They're bringing him in to be part of, the backfield with Chase Edmonds. He's not going to be the lead guy, but they're going to probably, do a little bit of a running back by committee. Connor's probably going to get that short yardage work. He's a guy who, despite being a big back, can receive pretty well. And, I think I don't think he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher by any stretch of imagination. But I think people aren't talking about Connor, and I think he's going to look good in this offense.
Okay, so you think he would be the sleeper for sure? Okay, I get that.
AJ Green's the sleeper,
no brainer.
But no a brainer. Guy we're not talking about, the guy that people aren't talking about enough, I think, or thinking about enough, is James Conner.
Okay, so since we're going on that topic on my team, also, there's just a player that comes to mind. But sure, he's a rookie, but I hear a lot of good things about this guy. So Trey Sermon, man, Trey Sermon can be the guy. I mean, sure, being the second running back is kind of like viable because Mostert can't stay healthy, so you're going to need somebody to complement that. As far as like a guy that they would have to watch out for is, I just think Trey Sermon will bring a lot to this offense, and he's just a rookie, so that might just be the guy that people need to not sleep on. I think when you come to an unheralded player, like Trent Sherfield is just one of those unheralded guys on offense that I'm hearing good things about, and it keeps on getting better with the chemistry and all the stuff. So I guess if I'm going unheralded on offense, it's Trent Sherfield for this point.
Yeah. And I tell you mentioned, and we both talked about, Trey Sermon. I have a feeling, and this is going to be driven a lot by the fantasy football community. When we get to the point where the regular seasons come about, Trey Sermon's going to be one of those guys that everyone's talking about. Like, everyone likes to look for those sleepers, especially in fantasy football. And I think everyone's going to be thinking, "Oh, Trey Sermon's my sleeper," and then all of a sudden, no, everybody's talking about it. He's no one's sleeper, because everyone expects him to do well in that. So I think he's going to. In fact, there's almost one of those things, the hype train might end up getting too big on Trey Sermon by the time we get to the regular season, because everyone's going to be on that train.
Oh, you know what? I'm going on a limb to say this. I've said it from different streams from other people. I'm going on a limb and say Trey Sermon's going to be our leading rusher by the end of the season. I think that's going to be it, because he's done it before in Ohio State, where he finished the season strong, and he did it in Oklahoma also. So it wouldn't surprise me if Trey Sermon were to get close to 1,000 yards, but he'll probably get like 800 yards at best. I mean, I don't think he's going to – well, depending on the touches, if Mostert missed some time, he's going to have more of a workload, so maybe he might get 1,000 yards.
Yeah. I mean, with the 49ers, that seems to be the history, right? That they have multiple guys who end up carrying the ball for them because someone gets injured. But whoever ends up, whoever it is for that 2 or 3 week stretch is effective. So, if the history repeats itself, you will probably have 3 to 4 running backs that all have at least 300 yards. But if I had to place a bet on which of those running backs on that team has the most yards, I'd go with you and agree that I would bet on Trey Sermon.
Yeah, because he's going to fit into this system. Like, just imagine what we did with a lot of these other running backs, like Matt Breida. Who was he when we got him undrafted?
Yeah.
What's he done now?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of guys like Jeff Wilson, an undrafted guy, very physical back too, and a good receiving back. We made him into something. I mean, there's just quite a few different players in mind, but yeah, it's an obvious choice. I know a lot of people are going to hype Najee Harris as that top rookie running back, but hey, don't sleep on Trey Sermon. He might just be the best running back in the draft. I mean, I'm not saying it because I'm a homer, but I've watched this guy play at Oklahoma and throughout Ohio State. This guy can be a beast. And plus, less mileage is always a good thing for running backs coming out of college, because if they've been overused a lot in college, they tend to wear and tear in the NFL. I mean, look at guys like Monte Ball and quite a few other running backs that had a lot of mileage used in college, and then they wear and tear in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree that he's the best running back coming out of college, but I would agree he's come into the best situation, right? I think he may have the best season, right? I still think there are a couple guys that might be more talented in terms of their playing ability, but Sermon's he's no slouch. Don't get me wrong, and the situation he's in is potentially a really good situation. You mentioned Najee Harris. That offensive line in Pittsburgh isn't good, right now. So, as good as he is, if he doesn't have a good line to run behind, he's going to struggle there in Pittsburgh. So, I think Sermon has a really great chance to have the best season of any of the rookie running backs.
Yeah, especially okay, if we're looking at all the rookie running backs, I don't know much about how Travis Etienne's going to do with the Jaguars because they got this James Robinson guy, how they're going to split the carries. It's going to be 50-50 on if he's going to be the best back or not. You got a lot of good backs New England just drafted a big back like Stevenson from Oklahoma. I don't think he's going to get much of a role, maybe not much carries. So let's just put that out the door. There's just quite a few good backs in mind that I can think of. Like you got Michael Carter from the Jets. Can he be that guy to be the best team as the receiving back? Also, he can be a good receiving back. Like in college, he had some good receiving yards, and he's a good runner, so the Jets might be able to utilize him more. Then you got the Broncos with Javonte Williams. I don't think he's going to get much touches over Melvin Gordon, so it's a tough one,
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but yeah, I mean, Sermon's definitely, to me, got the best situation of them all.
Yeah, and then plus moving to number 2 on the depth chart, that does increase his chances to at least get some more touches. I mean, no offense to Jeff Wilson, you getting injured pretty much opens the door for Trey Sermon now.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Yeah, so as far as your prediction, okay, we're gonna go to that later on, but I'm thinking okay, one of your defensive players for the Cardinals, a sleeper that nobody's talking about,
a sleeper that okay, so this is if we're going with a sleeper no one's talking about. That's a little bit tough because you got everyone's talking about JJ Watt, right? And obviously Chandler Jones and even though everyone's talking about the inside linebackers, Isaiah Simmons and Zayvon Collins, right? So you can't, I think one player, Marcus Golden is a guy who's had a couple seasons of double-digit sacks in his career. He's back in Arizona. He loves being a Cardinal, so he's a possibility. John Paul Edwards just mentioned Lucky Fotu, a second-year defensive lineman. I kind of like Zach Allen. He's in his third year, I believe, out of Boston College, defensive end, who was highly touted coming out of college. Had some injury issues, so he could be really good. And then I think maybe one other guy I might throw out there, if he can stay healthy, which again we say that so much during this.
Yeah, we say that a lot,
right? But Jalen Thompson, the safety, they got him as a supplemental pick, in the supplemental draft a couple years ago. He got injured a couple times, but he's slated to be the starter next to Budda Baker, and he's graded reasonably well in PFF. And his rookie year, he graded reasonably well. His second year graded reasonably well. Unfortunately, again, had some injury issues. But a guy who played pretty well as a rookie in his second year, I could see a scenario where in his third year, he stays healthy, takes another step forward as a part of that defense, and ends up being a player people are talking about.
Okay, I've heard of his name pop up. There's been some plays where he kind of made that interception play against my team that last year. Then he made a couple decent plays, and he's kind of been. Yeah. So, okay, defensive sleeper. Since we're going on that, so this one's kind of hard. I'm not going to pick the obvious choices because those are no brainers. But man, nobody's talking about this guy because he was considered labeled as a disappointment for the Raiders. But it looks to me he's making a lot of strides during training camp, and he's kind of making noises in training camp where he's kind of like the kind of guy we can rely on the rotation. So I got to say Arden Key comes to mind. Like, this is a guy who was supposed to be a top first-round draft pick out of LSU, but off the field was what hurt his draft stock, and then a lot of the work ethic was the questionable mark. But he only lasted 3 seasons with the Raiders, and then he got released, and then change of scenery. He looks like a different player from what I'm hearing about. Like during training camp, he's really like standing out if we're going by sleeper, But like I I don't know. Like he just seems like he's more happy to be there than he was with the Raiders. It seems to me he was just more excited to be there. It's like
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I mean, 49ers have had a good pass rush over the years. If everyone's healthy, he's playing across from Nick Bosa, and you see what happens you see what happens with the Rams. Aaron Donald, whoever's the pass rushers who get to line up around Aaron Donald benefit from that, right? So I could see a scenario where Arden Key ends up having a good season because Nick Bosa is getting all the attention. So if I were covering your team, I think that might be someone I would look at as a possible sleeper.
Yeah, like Arden Key, don't get me wrong about Samson Ebicom. I think he might be another one too, but everybody's talking good buzz about him, so I'm hearing too much about him. Now, I mean, a little bit about Arden Key, a little bit is what I'm hearing about, but compared to Samson Ebicom, everybody's praising about his physique and his quick and all that speed stuff. So gotta wait and see how that pans out. But hey, what's up? Enjoy my world. Falcons fan, I guess, but haven't seen her in a minute.
Falcons fan. So just as by the way, my career has brought me to Georgia. I live in Georgia, and a lot of my friends are Falcons fans. So I'm born in Arizona. That's where I've lived more than anywhere else in my life. But there's a little Falcons connection here, where I'm at. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's kind of interesting.
I lived in the Bay Area as a kid too. I lived in Hayward for 10 years. So, so in another universe, if I hadn't moved back I was born in Arizona, lived in California for 10 years, then moved back to Arizona. So there's a universe where I don't move back to Arizona and end up as a 49ers fan. But thank God I don't live in that universe because I like being a Cardinals fan.
Hey, it's what you find yourself. You find what makes you yourself. It could have been worse. Me being a Cowboy fan with my family would have been the worst case.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Our teams are rivals. We'll go at it with each other's teams, but one thing we can both agree on is the Cowboys suck.
Yes, we can agree on that part. I mean, some people keep even my family kept trying to push me into it as a kid. Like, why you're not gonna be a Cowboys fan? Why you don't like them? It's because I'm not into the star. I don't know what the star and the purpose is all about. And I'm hearing this hype of American team. But once I started finding my purpose of a team I liked, it started growing up in south of San Jose, started watching a lot of this training camp stuff. And my brothers got me into it. And then they gave me this Jerry Rice Adidas jersey. And ever since then, I've been hooked on that team. So it's kind of like,
nice.
I know it's a slap in the face to be the black sheep of the family, but hey,
so your family's all Cowboys fans then?
Majority of them are, and then very little Raider fans here and there. But
okay, are they what? So are they from Texas or?
Yeah, majority. Okay. I was born in the state of Texas too.
Okay, so on weird coincidence, I lived in Texas for 5 years. I was there for school. My wife's from Texas. One of my sons was born there. So I lived in Fort Worth and then I got the job here in Georgia. So I've been in Arizona, California, Texas, and here. So I spent some time in cowboy country too. So yeah, I just there's an arrogance about declaring yourself America's team, right? I'm not cool.
America's team. So. Yeah. And it's interesting that you've gone to a lot of journeys. Like, man, you went from place to place, but you got to experience a little bit of the universe. I mean, I went down Arizona like a couple times, and I visited down the stadium. Like, I got a picture of the Pat Tillman picture, which is a nice statue, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll probably just show you it on the inbox another time. But yeah, it's a good.
He had a question there. Yeah, I'd love to see that picture. I was going, hey, Joseph, question about the Cards. Where were you when Cards almost beat the Steelers in Super Bowl? I do. I was in Texas. So I moved to Texas in 2008 to go to grad school for my career now, what I do as a sociology professor. So I was living in Texas, in Fort Worth, Texas, going to school in Denton, Texas. And we had some friends who lived in McKinney, Texas, and we went over to their house to watch the Super Bowl. And I still have nightmares about James Harrison's interception of Kurt Warner that he returned for a touchdown, like 90-something yards or whatever. I'm like, can't someone tackle this pass rusher who just, like, it's not even like it was a speedy, defensive back who intercepted it. And man, I remember that night, and my wife drove us home because I was so distraught. And Man, that was a sad night. So yeah, thanks for bringing it up, man. I'm just messing with you, but yeah, I remember.
Oh man, the heartaches, man. I can feel you on that.
Yeah.
Man, like Super Bowl 47 was more painful. The Super Bowl of 54, it's kind of been like really. I don't want to go over there, man. The blood pressure, man, got to lower it down a little bit.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
It's got to deal. So you got to deal with Cowboys fans out there. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Like, I was when I was in school, I would teach like intro classes, and whenever I got a chance, I just kind of throw a little jab at the Cowboys, like in my PowerPoint or whatever on the screen, and just kind of make little jabs at the Cowboys, and the students were just kind of like, "Oh, all right, I see how it is." And, it was kind of fun, but yeah, but most Cowboys fans I've met are pretty good natured about it. They'll joke with you. They know the reputation that the team has. So
so you're a college. So are you still currently a college professor, or are you kind of
yeah,
just a?
no, that's my career. That's what I do for a living. Classes start next Wednesday. So yeah, and so but that's do my students know about my YouTube channel? I don't think so. I because no one's Cardinals fans around here. I teach in Georgia. Maybe one or two, though. Maybe a few of them that are with me on Facebook know about it. There's a few on my Facebook page, but not really. But I will say, like, I think like that. What I do for a living helps my channel in that the approach I take. If you watch my videos, I get into the stats a bit, and like my training or my education has helped me learn how to use stats to like construct arguments and make cases and knowing how to present data in a way that makes sense. Like if you watch my videos, I do a lot of graphics where I present information and stats and try to present. And I think my experience as a teacher in a classroom, one of the things you learn how to do as a teacher is you learn how to present information in a way that makes sense, right? So I feel
Yeah.
like those skill sets that I've had to develop for what I do for a job have helped my channel in the way I present information and and the approach I take to the videos that I do.
Oh, I mean, it does make difference. Like when I see your video, you do some analytic stats and you prove a good argument there. There's been quite a few of your videos where I've seen where you're talking about statistics and all the other stuff. You were talking about that one D-line player, Dennis Gardeck or something.
Yeah, the pass rusher. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can see why you're hyping this guy. Yeah, limited snaps are kind of like a very sample size of what he did. So maybe there's glimpse of maybe him being that breakout star. Maybe that's one guy you did not mention is that Gardeck guy.
yeah. Well, fans love him, like Cardinals fans, I should say. So like Cardinals fans talk about him, like and in fact, into that video I did on him. Kind of part of the argument there is I think he's going to be good, but I think if you're expecting him to be as efficient as he was last year, the sample, I don't think he's going to keep being that efficient. So but yeah, like to me the importance is if I'm doing my job right, I need to be able to present stats in a way that people who don't usually deal with stats still it makes sense to them. If that makes sense, like people, I'm a little bit of a stat nerd, but I have to be able to take those stats and tell a story with them, so that someone who's not a stats nerd can watch and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? Oh my yeah. So I appreciate your tact, and not the last stream with AZ Sports Fan this last Monday, and we actually went through every game and predicted the wins and losses. And listen, when it's the Rams, I picked the Rams to win both matchups against the Cardinals. And what I said was, until Cliff Kingsbury shows me he can beat the Rams, I'm not going to pick the Cardinals to beat the Rams. They need to show me. Cliff Kingsbury needs to show me at least once that he can develop a game plan that can beat the Rams. And when he shows me that, then I might be willing to pick the Cardinals win at home. But until then, every time the Cardinals play the Rams, I love my Cardinals, but I'm gonna say, you know what, I'm picking the Rams to win this game until the Cardinals show me they can do it.
Okay, so it's kind of been like a tough time with you guys playing the Rams because since Sean McVay's been the head coach, you guys have yet to beat them. And
Yep. Listen, I
uh,
love my team. I'm a diehard fan, but I try to be logical and I try to be balanced. You know, the reality is until they show me they can do it, I'm not going to believe it. You know.
realistically, you got to keep it 100. Like I know a
Yep.
lot of these other fans are. There's just fans that think I don't want to say the D word, but it's like they just think differently. They just think a little bit out of like too much. Realistically, that's like statistics of me comparing between the Niners and Seahawks. Like until we actually start beating them more, then I can see it more seriously. But
Yeah.
in reality, they've been owning us. So, but that can't be said for the Rams. We've been owning them for the last couple of years, so it's kind of been.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
But
but let me kind of counterbalance that though, because like as I don't want to sound like I believe in my team, and I will say this: I think that the national sports media is underselling the Cardinals right now. I think everyone's picking them to go, to finish last in the division. I think people are picking them to win 8 games, go 8. A lot of people seem to think they're going to go 8 and 9, maybe win 9 games, and I get that because the Cardinals haven't been into the playoffs since 2015. They haven't done well lately. So I understand they haven't shown it, but when I look at the roster and I look at the players they've added and I look at how they've improved the offensive line, Rodney Hudson, arguably the best center in the league, added to that offensive line, and how that's going to help Kyler Murray to do better, how that's going to help the running game, adding all the things they've added. I think this is a really good team, and I think they're going to do better than people think. Now, watch, if I'm wrong, I'll admit that, but I think people are selling the Cardinals short. But I also understand why, because they have to prove it, right?
yeah, like it's kind of tough. I mean, it's been a while since you guys were competitive. Like you guys had a chance to make the playoffs last year. Last year, you just all you had to do was win those 2 games, or even beat my team in general. That's all you had to do. And I think Cardinals would have already made the playoffs, but you gave the Chicago Bears that spot.
Man, dude, we couldn't win a game against you all with your third string quarterback or the Rams with the backup quarterback. And listen, and I'll say it, man, we didn't deserve to make the playoffs because we should have been able to win one of those 2 games. And no offense to the 49ers, but y'all were on your third string quarterback.
Yep.
We should have been able to beat you, but we couldn't. And kudos to your game, Shanahan's game plan. He showed that a really good job. But the Cardinals should have been able to beat them. They didn't, and that's what happened, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, all you guys had to do was win at least one out of those 2 games, and you guys would have automatically got into the playoffs. I mean, Bears were in thin ice, and you losing those 2 games gotten the chance to get into the playoffs. So, yeah. So okay.
Yep. So that was rough. Cardinals fans are still kind of hurting from that because we came out pretty strong, and after the game against Buffalo and the Hail Murray and things were going well, and then Kyler got banged up a little bit, and then we lost those games, and like all we had to do was win one game in those last couple games against 2 teams that had backup quarterbacks, and we couldn't pull it off. And like it's one of those things where when your expectations are higher, right? And the Cardinals were doing so good, and fans, their expectations like, oh my God, we're going to be in the playoffs this year, and then oh no, we're not, are we? And it was very deflating. And yeah, man, Cardinals and a lot of Cardinals right now, a lot of Cardinals fans are really down on Coach Cliff Kingsbury, and a lot of fans, want to see him fired, and it has a lot to do with the way things ended. So.
Oh yeah. So in a way for your team is you guys had a good start in the regular season. It was a great start in the first half. You guys were on a roll. You guys were the hot team, and then late in the season it just started to fall off a little bit. Like I just kind of realistically, when we played our third string quarterback, I'll be straightforward about it, man. I had us losing that game, and I was just predicting that realistically. I'm like saying the Cardinals are better. They're a more healthy team and better. I don't know if we'll beat them, so I was kind of keeping myself guessing a little bit. Yeah. And then I guess somebody was trying to convince me to do this. I guess somebody gave me an idea just to say, oh, you guys are gonna win. Hey, how about you bet this? And I'm like, I'm not a betting guy, but I was willing to go on that category, and I guess I won me that free jersey that day. So
Yeah.
guess I just wasn't sure. I didn't want to bet a game that seemed losable for us. I thought you guys were gonna beat us.
Listen, yeah, absolutely. Now he's asking discuss. So yeah, Cardinals fans are really critical of both the coach right now and Steve Keim, the general manager, and there's reasons to be critical. Okay, so like now I think I'm a little bit of I'm not how can I say I'm a little more hesitant to be one who wants to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But if you look at Steve Keim, he's made some good moves, like trades, like traded for like the DeAndre Hopkins trade, right? He traded a second round pick and a fourth round pick and David Johnson's bloated contract, right? Like, and he got DeAndre Hopkins, like that. Everyone knows what a great trade that was for the Cardinals and how bad that was for the Texans. Getting Rodney Hudson for a third round pick, I think was a good move. So he's made some good moves, but he struggled in terms of drafting. Like a lot of our draft picks haven't worked out, have moved on. And like I've seen some analytics from like Pro Football Focus had some different analytics and graphs they put out that measured like how good teams are drafting based on how many starts, how many games do their draft picks start, how do they perform or whatever. And like the Cardinals, in just about every way you measure it, were like in recent years have been the worst team in terms of the outcome of their draft picks. So Cardinals fans are really down on Steve Keim because the draft his drafting has just not been as good as other teams. Now there's a few players like Kyler and Buda Baker that have really worked out, but there's a lot of players like Robert Kimdiche and guys like that aren't with the team anymore, or even guys like Hassan Reddick who they used him incorrectly. Then last year they put him back as a pass rusher. They tried to play him as an off-ball linebacker. He struggled. They move him back to a pass rusher, which is what he played in college. He got 12 and a half sacks, and then they let him walk as a free agent, right? So Cardinals fans are really frustrated at Steve Keim because of the poor drafting and some of those kinds of moves. Now, when it comes to Cliff Kingsbury, I think I think the frustration at Keim is more justified because of the track record on drafting. I get that. Steve Keim, if you step back and look at it, like Cliff Kingsbury, he took over a team, right, that had won what was like 3 games, was like 3 games, and had the first overall pick, right? Drafted Kyler Murray, and then he went on to win 5 games the next year, 5-10-1. Then in his second year, got them to 8-8. Like if you step outside and just look at the numbers, new coach comes in with a 3-win team, improves them to 5 wins, then to 8 wins. You look at that, that's the trajectory you want. And you hope that third season they're making the playoffs, right? That looks like the trajectory of Buffalo, right? The teams that have become good teams. But the reason fans, are down on Kingsbury is, one, the way the season ended, right? The way that they ended, losing those games like we talked about. And there are some of the play calling that's been a little bit questionable. So that's kind of why fans are down on both of them. Bottom line is this year is a pivotal year. They need to make the playoffs or there's going to be some problems. He had a question. I'll read his question if you want to respond there. I know I'm talking a lot here.
Okay. Yeah, the Rambly Sports Report was asking, like, he was just talking about how, like, you can just read.
Do I agree that Kingsbury's I don't think he's as much of a liability as people think he is. I do think like, okay, hang on just a second. Sorry about that. My sons are being really loud in the background. So he's the least proven coach in the division, right? The other 3 coaches are more proven. And people say he's the worst coach, and maybe, right? But, at the same time, people learn and get better. So I'm a little holding out some hope that he's going to he's also going to continue to develop. So do I think he's a liability? I mean, listen, you're talking about a coach that took, again, a team that won 3 games 2 years ago and has got them to 8 wins. Like, there are a lot of coaches out there who didn't do that, right? So I think he's got to prove it this year. This will be a big year for him. But yeah, I mean, if you look at it objectively speaking, the other 3 coaches are more proven, right? But listen, at the same time, here's what I'm going to say. Like, if you're judging someone on their record, and I'm not meaning this as a shot, but like, Shanahan's win-loss record with the 49ers isn't stellar. He had 1 great season, right? So, but he's being still considered one of the better coaches in the league because people are looking at the injuries and looking at his coaching. So you have to look past some things sometimes and look at it with a little more nuance. But, you know, if Kingsbury takes a step backwards, he'll probably be out. But if he takes a step forward, people are going to be reconsidering that.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, there's just like last season, you guys were on a hot start, and it seemed like you guys were in that right direction. And then later in the season, it just started to digress a little bit, or regress, or whatever the words you would say. But I just think a lot of it has to play into like Kingsbury's play calls at times. I mean,
Murray got banged up a little bit. I mean, listen, Kingsbury's play calling needs to get better, but if Murray didn't get kind of dinged up a little bit, I think they win that 49ers game and make the playoffs, and we're having a different conversation. That's my opinion. Obviously, It didn't play out that way, so it's hard to know. But
I mean, if it was in that situation, yeah, I wouldn't disagree on it. I mean, you guys had like 2 winnable games at that end of the season, and it would have got you automatically the playoffs. It's just had to be at the wrong time to lose, you know. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
So as far as all the questions, what do you predict your Cardinals this season?
I came out with, and if you want to see the details, that go to AZ Sports Fans channel, and there's a video from this last Monday where we went through the full prediction. But I ended up with a 10-7 win-loss prediction, and I had them splitting with the 49ers. I had us winning in Arizona and you guys winning in San Francisco.
Okay, so anybody else that hasn't subscribed to the Cardinal Rule, man, go check out his channel. But he's definitely on the AZ Sports Fan. It's called, like on the stream, it's called the Fan and the Professor, which he's the professor if we're going to that route.
Right. But yeah, please check out my channel. I appreciate anyone who subscribes and watches my videos. I love doing talking football, and I really appreciate that people watch it.
Yeah, man. Like, it seems to me you're doing all your analytics and stats, and you're kind of like exactly what you say you are. You're the professor. You got all your. I mean, it seems interesting the way you're talking. So, anybody else, if there's any more questions, we're about to end the stream in a little bit. But yeah, I agree. Injuries have gotten Shanahan the benefit of a doubt with the horror. Yes, that's the point. I mean, Shanahan can do so much, but. See, the difference is if Shanahan were to coach in Arizona, I think he would have got that team built for the playoffs.
Maybe. I mean, listen, if he's the coach that y'all say he is, I think this roster's really good, and he would have got us there. I don't disagree. But, we'll see. I mean, I think Cliff has potential. Sometimes people forget that coaches develop just like players do too, and he's a young coach, has potential. We'll see what happens, though. He's got to prove it this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And so record prediction, like, okay, Cardinals could be a 10-win team. Or, I mean, it's just it depends on Kingsbury's play call, and it depends on how you guys perform overall. I mean, this division is going to be a dogfight, so it's going to be tough. As far as prediction-wise, I'm going at least 11 wins for my team because I think we have a favorable schedule. Like you said, we'll split with you guys. So it's probably going to be open who's going to want that playoff spot. So it's 50-50 between the Cardinals and Niners. Maybe it might come down to who wants that playoff spot. So
yeah. It's gonna be a dogfight, that's for sure, man.
Yeah, so appreciate every one of you guys. But definitely go check out the Cardinal Rule. Even though he represents the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, this guy's had this channel for 4 months, and he's already growing a huge audience. You guys got to go check out his channel. And anytime you get a chance to check out the AZ Sports Fan, go check out the Fan and Professor stream.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Hey, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed. And Peo asked a question about collaborating. Peo, follow me on my YouTube channel. There's a link to Twitter. Follow me on Twitter and message me there. I love talking. I love talking football with anyone who is willing to talk it civilly. So
Yeah, like Pale, like I think he has like a Instagram or something, but I'll definitely tell him to reach out to you. Yeah, Pale. Pale's a nice guy. He's a cool dude. Even though
nice.
he kind of goes with the Rams, he's a cool dude.
I won't hold that against him. Right.
It's all good, man. But this is what I like about the NFC West, man. It's the toughest division in football, but it's like a dysfunctional family, like in some
Right.
terms, It's all
Right.
good.
It's like Thanksgiving dinner, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But for everybody else, I'll thank you guys. And I'll give you the final say, and then we're gonna end the stream. I'll put you on the solo layup, and then
Oh, hey. Well, hey, listen, I just want to thank you for having me as part of the show. Really enjoyed talking football with you. You've been really, when you first reached out to me, I definitely appreciated that. And everyone in the chat's been great. And yeah, man, great questions, great conversation. And listen, looking forward to some great football.
all right. Yeah, dude, you've been nothing but respectful, class act. I mean, it's
Thank
like you're building your channel the right way, and like you said, it's timing. Timing is what's timing. So the draft time was your best timing. Hey, that's the best way to get your views, get those clickbaits in, and that's how you grow your channel.
Yeah, yep, for sure, man.
All right, man. So we're gonna end the stream. Have a good day, everybody. CG Ruthless Sports is out, and I'll just say the NFC West. I'm not going to try to rev it up to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Peace, everyone.
Peace. All right. Let's end this.